On February 10 local time, Christopher Waller, director of the U.S. Federal Reserve System, said investors can lose their entire investment by investing in virtual assets, and banks are becoming more wary of fraud risks must do, he said. He also added to virtual asset investors that as assets with no intrinsic value, virtual assets are risky, and if you want to hold such assets, don't be surprised if the price converges to zero. The International Monetary Fund recently warned that El Salvador needs to be careful about the move to actively use cryptocurrencies. El Salvador became the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender in September 2012. In January, a bill was passed allowing the issuance of bonds in cryptocurrencies. It paid $600 million of bonds in January amid investors' concerns about financing and fiscal policy. The IMF warned on February 10, the local time, that while El Salvador's use of Bitcoin has not yet led to problems, using cryptocurrencies carries risks. Given the legal risks, financial and vulnerabilities, and largely speculative nature of the cryptocurrency market, authorities said that El Salvador's plan to expand its use of Bitcoin should be reconsidered. Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, is known to have held $109.02 million since he pledged to buy Bitcoin every day when he introduced the legal currency. However, as more than 50% of the current investment amount was lost, the loss amount is estimated to be about $52.2 million. The government of El Salvador does not disclose where Bitcoin is purchased, held, or stored. In 1992, mathematician and programmer Eric Hughes, along with Timothy May and John Gilmore, organized a group called Cypherpunk. Cypherpunk is a compound word made by changing the I in cipher, which means password, to Y, and adding punks, which means resistance. In March 1993, Eric Hughes published a Cypherpunk's manifesto in order to protect personal information from powerful countries or large corporations. A cryptographic transaction system is needed. Centralization, privacy, resistance, and cryptography. Eric Hughes' idea, which would have been considered a delusion in the worldview of the 1990s, was realized 16 years later through Bitcoin developed by an anonymous developer, Satoshi Nakamoto. Bitcoin, whose motto is decentralization, sparked a wave of innovation with the antipathy toward the government and central bank printing money every time a financial crisis occurred. Cryptocurrency, which succeeded the Cypherpunk manifesto, is now drifting, losing the essence of decentralization. In its annual report published in June 2022, the Bank of International Settlement sarcastically referred to this phenomenon as the illusion of decentralization, pointing out that there is a contradiction in exchanges behind it. Most cryptocurrency investors trade on centralized exchange instead of a decentralized exchange. Investors flocking to centralized exchanges is a cross-section of market concentration, not the centralization. Domestic exchanges are also experiencing confusion between decentralization and centralization. In Korea, there is a joint consultative body for digital asset exchanges called DAXA. It is a kind of deliberation and decision-making body established by Upbit, Bitcoin, GoPex, and CodeBit, the 5 major virtual currency exchanges in Korea. DAXA set the goal of preparing self-regulatory measures for safe transaction and compliance of cryptocurrency, but now it is criticized for centralizing the virtual asset market. In November 2022, DAXA decided to delist the virtual currency WeMax issued by the game company WeMade. It symbolically shows that cryptocurrency, which had been prioritized for decentralization, was caught in the trap of centralization. On the contrary, cryptocurrency, which had lost its essence, had fallen into a swamp of contradiction. Bitcoin tried to change the world with the banner of decentralization. In addition to this, governments around the world are weighing the balance between regulation and industry promotion in order to minimize losses and damages to ordinary investors. So does Bitcoin have a future? In the end, it's up to you to decide based on your own beliefs. We need a grounded faith through study, not the blind faith that was prevalent in the old days when Newton was investing. It is also important to understand the trend that are changing the flow of the world. In the end, investing is about looking at the forest rather than the trees and having a courage to go one step ahead based on grounded beliefs instead of man needs.